I reversed 20 years of arterial plaque. For years, I was eating the wrong diet, and when I finally got tested, the results were devastating. Despite my best efforts, I developed cardiovascular plaque. However, I believe what I did to reverse it can be done by many people. While not everyone can fully reverse plaque, almost everyone can stabilize it and significantly reduce their risk of a heart attack, taking most of that risk off the table. This is my story of how I reversed my arterial plaque. Here's what happened. At age 57, I thought I was healthy. I had been dedicated to preventive medicine for over 40 years, even teaching at Johns Hopkins, which is arguably the top preventive medicine program in the world. I practiced what I preached, focusing on lifestyle and avoiding medications. Low-fat dietary guidelines were the standard at that time, and nobody questioned them. We were just starting to discover that dietary cholesterol might not be the cause of cholesterol in artery walls. The logic then was that since fat was the most calorie-dense nutrient, it must be the biggest problem. I believed that for decades, but not anymore. Back in those days, I overachieved in cardio exercise, running half marathons almost every week, and completing a dozen full marathons by age 55. I was against medications and supplements, thinking they were just expensive urine. But something happened at age 54 that made me rethink things. During a routine screening, my blood pressure was 130/90, and it didn't come back down. I didn't like it, but I eventually agreed to take medication to lower my blood pressure. After retiring again, I was introduced to Brad Bale and Amy Donane, who teach their own form of preventive medicine. Reading their book, Beat the Heart Attack Gene, opened my eyes to two important perspectives. First, it made me question the standard model of heart disease focused on LDL cholesterol. Like most doctors, I knew that diabetes caused heart disease, but I had no idea how common pre-diabetes was or how to diagnose it. I also didn't realize that metabolic disease causes most chronic diseases, and even most of what we call normal aging. The second perspective I gained from their book was the importance of testing instead of guessing. Coming from Hopkins, I had always been focused on William Osler's advice to listen to the patient's history. But the idea of test, don't guess, gave me a new perspective. I began to realize that patients pay attention to lab tests, often more than they do to their doctors. Brad invited me to one of their events where they were training doctors in Las Vegas. When I took the CIMT test, I expected to see no plaque. I was wrong. My CIMT test results from 2015 showed that I had more plaque than the average 57-year-old. I had the arteries of a 73-year-old. This realization hit me hard. Despite all my healthy habits, I had still developed cardiovascular plaque. It felt like all my efforts to stay healthy were wasted. It took me weeks to wrap my head around the fact that I could have already had a heart attack, or even died. It doesn't take much plaque to cause a heart attack. But then, it dawned on me that if I still had plaque despite my focus on prevention, what shape would I have been in if I hadn't taken care of my body? I could already have had a heart attack or worse. I lived in Lexington, Kentucky at the time. Every Saturday morning I ran a half marathon through beautiful horse country. After discovering my plaque, I worried that if I had a heart attack out there, it could be hours before my body was found. Those fears are normal when you first recognize your mortality, especially when discovering your own cardiovascular risk. Eventually, I composed myself and realized that I needed to listen to my own advice. For example, exercise like jogging doesn't cause heart attacks, so I needed to move on. When I returned home from that run, I decided to make some changes. I did more tests, including an oral glucose tolerance test. This is important. My blood sugar peaked over 160, which meant I had enough pre-diabetes to cause cardiovascular plaque. I'll repeat that. My blood sugar peaked at over 160, indicating enough pre-diabetes to cause plaque and increase heart disease risk. One of the biggest changes I made was switching from a low-fat diet to a low-carb diet. Since then, I've tested multiple diets, ranging from carnivore to vegan, paleo, and keto, but all have been low-carb. I'm in ketosis about 5 days a week and have been fat-adapted for about 10 years. In about a year, I was able to reduce my average CIMT from 0.88 millimeters to 0.67 millimeters, effectively reversing my arterial age from 73 to 52 years. How did this happen? When you reverse plaque, you're not necessarily removing calcium or cholesterol from the artery. Instead, you're reducing the inflammatory liquid, which causes the plaque to shrink, making it more stable and less likely to cause a heart attack or stroke. I still have plaque, as seen in a CIMT from 2019, but it's now mostly calcified and stable. Removing inflammation or reversing plaque leads to more stable plaque and less or no soft plaque. The best goal is to have no plaque at all, but most of us develop plaque as we age and become insulin resistant. When we do, the key is to stabilize that plaque. So, what did I do to reverse my plaque? I changed the way I ate, switching from low fat to low carb. I changed the way I exercised and started taking supplements. I also started medications, though lifestyle changes were far more important. At 5'10", I weighed about 157 pounds, so I didn't have much weight to lose, but I did lose 5 to 10 pounds, which helped. I also traded marathon distances for more high-intensity interval training, or HIIT, and resistance training, especially in my legs. Strong, metabolically active legs are the most effective internal safety valve against rising blood sugar. I also started taking supplements like vitamin D3, niacin, and others tailored to my needs. My latest CIMT from December 2023 shows that I've managed to keep my plaque stable. My arterial age is now back to a healthy 58 years old, well below the average for my age. Regarding labs, I've had low HDL most of my life, but I've managed to increase it by going low carb even as I've aged. This improvement in my metabolism is reflected in my lipid profiles and fractionation. At this point, I focus on keeping my body fat down, with my body fat percentage staying around 20%, equivalent to the average 18-year-old. My visceral fat remains very low, which is healthy for an older man like me. I've also been managing my carbs for over a decade and working out regularly, doing HIIT and resistance training multiple times a week. This level of discipline, whether in diet or exercise, is crucial. Making a change and sticking with it is the hardest part, but it's essential for long-term health. If you're thinking about stress tests or stents as solutions, be aware that I wrote a whole book on why stress tests don't predict heart attacks and stents don't prevent them. Calcium scores are more well known, but they don't tell you everything, especially not about soft plaque, which is the most dangerous. Even a score of 0 doesn't guarantee you're safe from a heart attack. Lastly, the new kid on the block is the CT angiogram with AI. I'm a big fan because it shows both soft and calcified plaque in detail. However, it's more expensive, somewhat invasive, and with the wrong interpretation, it can lead to unnecessary procedures.